Hey everyone, so there's been a lot more movement both in the public eye and out of the public eye going on in the off season, but I want to talk right now about just one of the topics that has come up. I'm not going to branch out into much of other stuff or, leak anything or anything like that. The only thing I want to talk about is something that is relatively near to my heart, I would say, which is the rumor that came out about Evil Geniuses being interested in Jensen. So the what came out today was in Travis Gafford's video. He put out a bunch of stuff about all the different LCS teams, and in the portion on Evil Geniuses, he said, and I'm going to quote it so that I get exactly what he said, because he had some things that he considered to be reports based on sources, and others that were a little bit more speculative and stuff. And I want to make sure that I don't misrepresent what he actually said. So what he said is, where's Jensen going to go? Right now, I believe, a lot of people believe, there's kind of an assumption. I shouldn't say that there's sources that believe that this deal is done or anything like that, but a lot of people believe that Jensen will be headed to EG. So that's what he said. So, very much on the rumor side of things. So if I had to put a bit of a weight to this, a strong rumor from Travis that Jensen will be going to EG. Not that EG are considering or interested in Jensen, but that Jensen will be headed to EG is what he said. And I want to say as well that I've heard this rumor elsewhere, behind the scenes, talking to other people as well. So maybe that originated from the same source Travis got it from. I've said before, some of these things can kind of echo chamber out, and even if it only came from one place originally, then it spreads to a bunch of other people, and multiple of those other people then tell it to you, and it might feel like you're getting it from multiple sources, but unless you have relatively direct or close to primary sources, you don't know this is actually coming from multiple places or ultimately coming back to just that one. It's really hard to know, right? So I have no idea. But this is a rumor that Travis is not the only one who's heard it, okay? So I just want to throw that out there. But we're discussing this as a rumor. We're discussing it as something that has been floated out there from wherever, not as a report based on direct sources or anything like that. So the reason that this is kind of close to my heart is because it concerns the Evil Geniuses mid lane, where I have said very publicly and pretty much the entire year I've been hyping up Jojo Pyun as coming out of Evil Geniuses Academy as and in fact in the Reddit video on Travis's channel. Just the other day, I put out that Jojo Pyun is one of the players most ready or kind of highest priority to be promoted into the LCS. So obviously this is something that, as somebody who tracks Academy and does weekly content on Academy, the only person who does that, this kind of matters to me, right? And not like the idea that Evil Geniuses would get Jensen is gonna offend me or something like that. It's not like it's just that this is an area that I track and have opinions about, and try to get information about when I can. And again, I'm not going to be leaking anything here. This is not based on any kind of leaks or sources or stuff like that. This is just trying to piece together what might actually be happening. So my first reaction when I heard this was, no, that's BS. That's total BS. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I want to talk through why that was my reaction the first time I heard this, okay? So first of all, both Jojo Pyun and Jensen, and I guess I should probably state here that Jizuke is a free agent in case you haven't tracked this, and I don't believe that Evil Geniuses are going to bring Jizuke back. Anything could happen, right? But this is the reason we're talking about Evil Geniuses mid lane and I'm not including Jizuke in the conversation. Also, it's just too many J names. So, both Jensen and Jojo Pyun, domestic players, okay? No import slot taken up, so you still have 2 import slots to work with either way. So you can keep that for Ignar in the bottom lane. You can do something in the jungle, whatever you want. Different imports, same imports. I don't know. But you're not using up an import slot with either of them. So you get a difference between the 2 players on money is one place. And this is where kind of one of the first places my head goes. Jensen would have a buyout, right? If you have to buy out Jensen from Team Liquid, and if you haven't been tracking the whole saga of, is Bjergsen going to Team Liquid or somewhere else or whatever else is going on, that's a whole thing of why Jensen would potentially be available from Team Liquid, but he's still under contract with Team Liquid. So you would have to pay a buyout. Now, how big would that buyout be? I don't really know. I suspect it would be on the large side, but it depends what large means these days. When you're seeing numbers like 8 million thrown out for certain players, that's not what Jensen would command. But let's say he commands an eighth of that. Let's say he commands a quarter of that. That's still a lot of money that you're paying, right? $1 million, $2 million. Maybe it's a lot less than that. I don't know, but it's a buyout, and it's not going to be a negligible buyout like 25,000 or something like that. It's going to be a lot of money that does factor into the decision making. Then there's salary. When Jensen signed his current deal with Team Liquid, I believe it was reported that he was being paid somewhere like $1.3 million a year, something like that. I feel reasonably confident predicting that Jojo Pyun's salary would be a quarter or less of what Jensen would be earning. Maybe you renegotiate Jensen's deal after you buy him out, something like that. Maybe you pay Jojo Pyun a lot more money than that. I'm not really sure what rookies are getting paid. But again, the salary would be a big gap, whatever number you put in. I'm totally speculating out that kind of 4 times number. But again, it's an amount of money that does matter. So if you're going to pay this money to get Jensen, you need to believe it's worth it, right? You need to believe not that these are 2 equivalent players or something like that, but that there's something about Jensen that is worth paying a pretty noticeable amount of money on top of just promoting Jojo Pyun internally for free and giving him a raise relative to his academy salary. So then you get into, obviously, the part that actually matters more than the money, because you're not just going to build the absolute cheapest roster. You want to build the best roster that can win within the budget you have. So let's talk about their performance levels, their skill levels, their play style as well. And I don't want to be sending any disrespect to Jensen here, because I recognize that I'm comparing Jensen, who is one of the greatest mid laners the LCS has ever had, especially in terms of like longevity and achievements. Arguably outperformed Bjergsen on a lot of different levels. Bjergsen seems to have a little more legacy, but like those two have always been kind of tied together as these are the two you discuss, right? So, and I have a ton of respect for Jensen, what he's achieved, who he is as a player, and what he can still do, right? His 2021 was not great by his own standards, in my opinion. His Worlds tournament, I was really impressed with, partly because it was such a step up over what I had seen from him throughout the domestic year. But I don't think that his 2021 overall was up to his own standards. And I'm not going back and like rewriting my opinions about Jensen here. Personally, I didn't vote him into top 3 All-Pro in either spring or summer. In spring, I voted Perks, then Jizuke, then Power of Evil. In summer, I voted Jizuke, then Perks, then Abadaga. So I didn't consider Jensen a top 4 mid, and I'm pretty sure I would have had him down maybe even 5th in some of those. I don't remember. I didn't write it all down. But I didn't consider him in that top echelon, whereas historically, throughout his time in NA, I think you typically would have put him in top 2, top 3 very consistently. But this year, I thought he took a bit of a step backwards. So yeah, this that's just some evidence to say that I've been feeling all year that he's kind of fallen off a little. And it's not just my opinion either. You know, he did land on the 3rd team All-Pro in spring. He wasn't on any of the 3 All-Pro teams in terms of the overall voting. So, I think the more general common opinion Jensen was a little bit above my own. But again, we're not talking about a consensus top 2, top 3 mid laner in the LCS this year. Historically, yes. This year, no. When you look at Jojo Pyun, obviously he played in Academy, very up and down kind of a year, but mostly because of the way he plays and the lack of experience. I believe that Jojo Pyun has better hands than Jensen right now and is a better laner than Jensen right now. If you put them in a bunch of 1v1s, I believe Jojo Pyun would win. Based on what I've seen out of both players and the way they play, and just watching them very closely. Others might have a different opinion on that. This is my analytical opinion of the 2 players. Okay. I believe that Jojo Pyun is more individually skilled right now than Jensen. Of course, Jensen has other advantages, but I'm going to talk about those as well. Jojo Pyun plays the style that I perceive EG to want to play. He plays in your face. He plays very high pressure. He plays with a ton of tempo. He plays to get out of lane and do stuff. He plays to skirmish. These are all things that EG have been trying to do more and more of. And from what I can tell of the philosophy of the coaching staff, it's what they want. Okay, and I believe it's the future and the present of the game as well. Jensen is a reasonably diverse player, right? Like we can talk about players who are control mage players, and that's kind of all they do. They sit back, they farm their lane, they scale, they get good CS difference numbers, they put out their damage, they land their Orianna ultimates. Jensen does not get crammed into that box, right? He's got more to him than that. But relatively speaking, compared to the way Jojo Pion plays, he is more stay at home. He's more scaling or team oriented. He's more team fight oriented. He's if you compared him to the ideal mid laner of several years ago, Jensen would be more aggressive, more map aware, influencing the river and the jungle more than those mid laners. But he is still in the mold to a certain extent. He's still a player in the mold of the era that he came up in. And Jojo Piano is coming up in this era, where things are a little different, right? He's coming up in the era where Doinby changed the world of mid lane. And I think that Jojo Piano has that stylistic advantage. Now, on the other hand, Jensen is a player who, of course, he has so much more experience. He's got so much more poise. And he's been there and he's done it all, right? In terms of what you can do as a mid laner in the LCS. He's going to make a lot fewer mistakes than Jojo Pion. He might make fewer winning plays and get fewer double-digit kill games than a Jojo Pion, but he's also going to have fewer double-digit death games. He's going to have fewer, fight over the scuttle crab and die moments, in a little bit of that kind of mold, right, of what you look for. And this is because of the differences in their styles, and it's also because of the differences in their levels of experience. So if you want a player who's not going to lose you any games, Jensen is going to be a lot better for that. If you averaged out their performance over the course of the full spring split, I think Jensen would probably get you more. But the question is, by the end of the year, by the time you actually have to qualify for Worlds, which player do you think is going to be achieving more for you? That's a big part of the question here. And I think there could be different opinions on that. So those are, when I run through all those thoughts, and of course I have them very quickly as kind of my gut reaction to hearing this information that, EG might be considering Jensen. I put all those together and I say, okay, Jojo Pion is the much smarter financial choice. He is, I think, more skilled and can catch up to Jensen in experience and, be coached at the LCS level, face LCS opposition, and grow into a player who can rival Jensen towards the end of the year when it really matters. So that's my gut reaction. But then I think about it a little bit more, and I hear this rumor come up, again, in more than one place, and I have I have to sit back and think about it. Okay, my more thought out, my kind of second reaction, the second layer to my coping, maybe it is a thing. Maybe EG actually are looking at this and it's not just kind of BS information out there that I can't understand where it came from. If so, let's put myself in the shoes of the EG staff, the general manager and whoever else is influencing this decision. If they are considering Jensen, why would they? And can I kind of talk myself into it? So to be clear, again, I still feel that this move would make no sense to me. I have done this exercise and I'm going to walk you through it. It still makes no sense to me, but here's how it might make sense to Evil Geniuses. So first of all, EG desperately want to go to Worlds in NA. I think all of the big teams, all of the teams in the LCS want to go to Worlds in NA. The best sponsor time, the best opportunity to get fans watching in the NA time zone. It's going to be huge for your business and your org over the long term. It's very, very important to LCS teams to go to Worlds if they think they possibly have any chance, and they're going to be willing to invest to do that. Because of that, and just because of the EG org and what they've shown in the past, I don't think Jensen's price tag would bother EG at all, especially if they get to Worlds because of it, or if they feel like it would help them get to Worlds, give them a better chance. I don't think dropping $2-3 extra million this year, if they thought it substantially increased their chances of being at Worlds, they would feel like it was probably worth it. Okay, so we can take that money piece, and I think we can just move it out of the equation and say, but that actually doesn't matter. Now, we can also look at the two players, and what you can expect from Jensen is the kind of the sure thing. He's so experienced, he's so reliable. And when you look at the way he performed this year and the fact that he did show up at Worlds and he got TL into 2 finals and all of that, you can be pretty confident that having Jensen in your lineup is going to get you where you want to go. Like, you're not going to get some dramatic underperformance, right? That totally throws you off and like, whoa, we thought, we had a range of performances like this and we got one way down here and it just really sunk us. You're not going to get that. Jensen is going to give you, at worst, a very acceptable level of performance. And if the rest of your team is decent, there you go. Then you're going to feel good about that. Jojo Pion, on the other hand, is a risk. There's no way around it. He's probably a big risk, right? He's 17. He just turned 17. He plays such a high variance style. He can do the kind of 0 and 10 games. Of course, he's a risk. Everything works together and says Jojo Pion is a risk. So if you've got Jensen with a range of performances like this, and you've got Jojo Pion with a range of performances kind of like this, and you think maybe he could end up, maybe you think it's more like this, right? Like the top end of Jojo Pion outcomes might be better than top end of Jensen outcomes, but the low end is like way down there. If you feel that way and you don't want to take that kind of a risk in a year where you feel you need to get to Worlds, yeah, you might say we can't do that, right? And that doesn't mean that you're like giving up on Jojo Pion as kind of a player for you in the long term. You can give him another year in academy. You could try to loan him out to an ERL team, something like that, give him that development opportunity. And when he's 18, maybe the time is then. Maybe you look at Jensen as a 1-year player. Or maybe you just say, we got to get to Worlds this year and we'll figure out the rest later, right? Not worry about the longer term. So the risk factor definitely plays into it. Now, maybe the Evil Geniuses coaches look at Jensen and the way he plays, and maybe they think they could bring out more of their preferred playstyle from Jensen, because as I said, he's not some like put him in a box, all he does is scale and control mages. He's not that, right? He's more of that than a Jojo Pion or a Jizuke for that matter, or some of these guys are, right? But he can play these other things. He can play the assassins. He can play melee champions. He can do all of those things. It's not really about his champion pool. I don't want to digress into the subtleties of what it means to be, a conservative or a scaling player. It's not just about playing control mages. It's about a lot of other things, but the way you influence River, the way you play around Vision, a lot of stuff. But maybe the EG coaches think, but if we get our hands on Jensen and we teach him more of these things, we can bring out more of that style we like, get him to be more of a pressure player, get him to be more of a skirmish player than we think he has been before, right? Or maybe they don't even really think this is a stylistic thing, what I'm describing. I don't know. So if that's a factor, and that they feel confident that the playstyle difference is coachable, and maybe even coached in general, and that they don't think that playstyle difference is actually really relevant, then you take away that objection, right? Now, another reason, maybe there are other players that EG are trying to acquire, or players currently on the roster who look at Jojo Pion and go, and they like say, I'd rather play with Jensen. So if I'm going to play with this team, or if I'm considering signing with EG, maybe there's an import and they're trying to convince this import to sign, and they say, you could sign with us and play with Jensen, or you could sign with us and play Jojo Pion. And the person says, I'm not going to sign with you unless I'm playing with someone like Jensen. Maybe you need to bring in the Jensen to secure that other signing, right? That's possible. I have no idea. And then there's maybe that EG just think that the overall gap in current performance level between Jensen and Jojo Pion, and right now Jensen is a stronger all-around player than Jojo Pion. Maybe they think that gap is too big for them to close with coaching and experience in time to reach Worlds. So in time for, August or whatever. So that's another possible reason. So if those reasons come together and you say Jojo Pion is too big of a risk, we need to have Jensen to secure the rest of the roster we want, we think we can coach Jensen into more of the style we want, or we disagree with Tim and don't think that style thing is really a difference, or we just think Jensen is, a notably better player than Jojo Pion and will be all year long. If those all come together and you think this is going to be that extra boost we need to give us as great a shot as possible of reaching Worlds, then you could say, yeah, we're going to look at Jensen. But at the end of the day, I don't convince myself with those things. EG are willing to take risks, and they've shown it. Now, there was some context around why they promoted Danny and what other options they had, and that was not their original plan going into the year. But they did promote Danny, and they could have probably done something else. Maybe they would have had to spend a lot of money to do it, but they were willing to promote Danny instead of spending a ton of money or going after these other things. I mean, possibly there was some other option to spend a ton of money, but it was like way more money, or maybe there weren't any other options and they just had to do Danny. But we've seen in actual practical actions, they did promote Danny, and Danny had less experience than Jojo Pion has now, and his growth areas are more difficult to work on, which specifically is Danny's laning. Danny's laning is his weakest point, in my opinion, and that is much, much harder to develop than it is to develop the things that Jojo Pion needs to work on, which is restraint, timing, synchronization a little bit with his team, picking his moments. Those are things that come with time and experience primarily, and trying it against better players and getting punished, and then next time you go, this isn't going to work. My calculation, my head shifts a little bit. I would much, much, much rather promote a player whose laning is amazing but needs to clean up the edges of his decision-making compared to promoting the player who team fights super well, but struggles with his laning, which was Danny. So the risk they took with Danny, in my opinion, was bigger risk with less ceiling compared to Jojo Pion, who I think would be less risk and even more ceiling. So I don't buy the risk argument, personally. You can also manage the risk, because if he doesn't work out in spring, and I think you would have at least give him the whole spring split, and I think this is the way the coaching staff would view it, is you give him the whole split, then you plan for that by having a relatively veteran player in academy in case you need that, or you make a mid-year move like 100 Thieves did to get Abadaga. Now, you can't guarantee that the player is going to be available. Abadaga is available because of certain circumstances in the LEC and all of that, so you can't guarantee that there's going to be an Abadaga available to try that. Plus, would you have the import slot if it's that, or is there something else domestically? But I don't think you need to go in and say, if we promote Jojo Pion, the entire year is locked, and if it fails, we're doomed and there's nothing we can do. No, you can hedge, right? You can hedge with a veteran academy. You can hedge with acquisition options mid-year. And maybe those don't work out. There's a risk to that as well. But I don't think that risk is as big as some people might sell it up to be. I think if there are other potential signings that you're going after who say, I don't want to play with Jojo Pion, I want to play with Jensen instead, there's always the chance that that's a factor, right? And I don't want to pretend it isn't, but I think your staff would maybe need to do a bit of a better job convincing them by believing in their player more. And I know who's on EG's staff. I don't think this is a real problem. I don't think this is a challenge that they would have to convince people too badly to play with Jojo Pion. I don't think that's, I don't know. My gut tells me, my heart tells me something, something tells me I don't think that's a real problem for what they're trying to do in signings, but maybe it is. I don't know. I can't really discount that one. And then also, if EG think that Jojo Pion can't rival or exceed Jensen's performance level by August, this is the real crux of the whole thing to me. I don't think risk is the issue. I don't think the ability to construct the rest of the roster you want is the real issue. I think it comes down to, do you think Jojo Pion could be as good or close to as good or even a little better than Jensen by August? I believe Jojo Pion can. If you don't believe he can, by all means, go out and get Jensen. And if EG do end up getting Jensen, then this is the most likely reason that I think that they will have done it. End of the day, I think EG picking up Jensen would not be a good choice, and I still think that this rumor is kind of BS. Not that it's made up, because it's coming from somewhere, but I don't think it has real momentum to it or real likelihood of happening. My biases are coming through and influencing that clearly. This might be the most impassioned video I've made of this offseason for sure. But I very, very strongly believe in Jojo Pion and what he can become. And I don't think signing Jensen or acquiring Jensen or paying a buyout for that would be a smart strategic call for EG. I think if you're going to spend a bunch of money, and if there's something you're going to do that involves not having Jojo Pion as your starter for LCS, there are bigger and better things that you could do. And none of this is to disrespect Jensen. I strongly believe we'll see Jensen in the LCS next year. And I believe that he'll be doing a very good job and continuing to extend that great legacy. And he's a big part of the LCS. And all of this is not meant to take anything away from him at all. So, yeah, those are all my thoughts. I definitely didn't think I would have quite so much to say or so long to talk about it, but clearly I feel strongly about all of this. And at the end of the day, we will just have to find out what EG think and what they're going to do and what their decision tree and analysis has looked like, what their options looked like, and how it all plays out. So this has been already just a very wild off season. This is only one little story of what might be emerging. There's so much more, but I think this is a very fascinating one, and yeah, I hope you find it interesting as well. It's got NA talent involved. It's got NA legacy involved, legacy superstars, and I think EG, yeah, we'll just have to find out together where they land on it all. I should wrap it up there before I continue to ramble on nothing. So, thanks for watching.